This is my review of Squatch Detective Radio for last night. It was actually a pretty great show. J.C. Johnson was the guest from Cryptid-Corner. He actually talked about the upcoming DNA study a little. He touched on it a little bit. The upcoming DNA study, which Dr. Melba Ketchum is sponsoring. Plus, there was a witness on named Brenda, who talked about some encounters and sightings that she has had in her area. Brenda, no last name, of course. I think that's a good thing. Want to make sure that you keep your witnesses confidential. She also claimed to have possible video and photographs of the Sasquatches that she has seen, or some of them that she has seen. And I thought that was interesting and fascinating. I don't know what Steve has planned for next week. We'll begin at 8 Eastern, 7 Central, www.blogtalkradio.com/thesquatchdetective. And as always, we do encourage you, please do and support great research. This is a review of a book that has been available for many years now. Actually, it's out of print, though. But it was revised and reprinted in 2006, and that is the Bigfoot Casebook, which came out in 2006 as the Bigfoot Casebook Updated. Sightings and encounters from 1818 to 2004. Now, this book came out in 1982. At the time, there weren't too many authors focusing on other states outside the Pacific Northwest. This was one of the first books to do just that, to focus outside the Pacific Northwest and into areas. Well, you had John Green's Sasquatch the Apes Among Us, which focused on our areas outside the Pacific Northwest in 1978. But as far as going through actual sightings, there hadn't been a book of that caliber until this book came out. The descriptor on the back of the book goes as follows: the front cover photo is taken from a motion picture film shot by Bigfoot investigator Roger Patterson near Bluff Creek, California in 1967. Photo Patterson Gimlin, 1968, Renee DeHinden. Below, experts comment on the Patterson film. Perhaps it was a man dressed up in a monkey skin. If so, it was a brilliantly executed hoax, and the unknown perpetrator will take his place with the great hoaxers of the world. Perhaps it was the first film of a new type of hominid, quite unknown to science, in which case Roger Patterson deserves to rank with Dubois, the discoverer of Pithecanthropus erectus, or Java Man. Dr. John Napier, physical anthropologist, formerly head of the primate program at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington. The quotation comes from his book Bigfoot, 1972. With all the diversity of human gaits, such a walk as demonstrated by the creature in the film is absolutely non-typical of man. Dr. Dmitry Donskoy, chief of the chair of biomechanics at the USSR Central Institute of Physical Culture in Moscow. My subjective impressions have oscillated between total acceptance of the Sasquatch on the ground that the film would be difficult to fake, to one of irrational rejection based on an emotional response to the possibility that the Sasquatch actually exists. This seems worth stating because others have reacted similarly to the film. The possibility of a very clever fake cannot be ruled out on the evidence of the film. A man could have sufficient height and suitable proportions to mimic the longitudinal dimensions of the Sasquatch. The shoulder breadth, however, would be difficult to achieve without giving an unnatural appearance to the arm swing and shoulder contours. The possibility of fakery is ruled out if the speed of the film was 16 or 18 frames per second. No one knows at what speed the film was shot. In these conditions, a normal human being could not duplicate the observed pattern, which would suggest that the Sasquatch must possess a very different locomotor system to that of man. Dr. D.W. Grieve, reader in biomechanics at the Royal Free Hospital School of Medicine, London, in the conclusion to his report on the Patterson Gimlin film. Now that's on the back of the original edition. On the back of the Bigfoot Casebook Updated, The Sights, October 20th, 1967. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin shot the famous 16mm film of a female Bigfoot crossing open ground as the creature escaped the searchers in the remote wilderness near Bluff Creek, California. Controversy as to its authenticity has continued for over 40 years. The searchers, Renee Hendon left and Roger Patterson right, hold casts of footprints collected from the Bluff Creek site. Many like these men who have carried on the search are dedicated to investigating continued sightings and reports in an effort to solve the mystery of the Bigfoot phenomenon. The Scientists, a determined community of Bigfoot researchers, continues to seek proof of the creature's existence through field work and laboratory research. Whether the scientists will succeed in discovering hard evidence is unknown. Even with thousands of witnesses, confirmation has proven elusive. There's a picture of Grover Krantz right there. You can probably see it. Anyway, I guess the review of the book is, I first read the book in 1983, the summer of 1983. Checked it out from a library. It was Canton, Georgia. In Canton, Georgia, the Canton City Library had a copy of it, and I thought, well, this is cool. This is a new book on Sasquatch, a new book on Bigfoot. So I checked it out and I read it. And it was the original paperback that I actually first read. And this is probably one of the best books ever written on the subject. And there are reports from all states, going from 1818 to 1980 in the original edition. And then they expand on that in this edition. By the way, Lauren Coleman wrote the foreword to this edition. And there's also, one of the cool things about this book, there's also a section on the new millennium, elusive as ever, from 1981 to 1999. Then going into the new millennium from 2000 to 2004. And then the chronological list of Bigfoot sightings from 1818 to 1980. And it's quite extensive. There's quite a few sightings listed here. And they go through all the states that Sasquatch has been sighted in. It goes from 1818 all the way to 1980. It's essentially the same. It is the same in here as it is in the original. Anyway, this is a really excellent book. Whether you have the copy of this, the original, whether you have the original, or whether you have the updated version. The updated version actually has several photographs in it that were not included in the original book. As Lauren Coleman notes in the introduction, a classic renewed for the ages. And indeed it is. I highly recommend getting this book, whether you have it already or whether you want to. If you want a good perspective on all the sightings that have taken place in the United States, but it really doesn't have all the sightings listed. There are obviously those that would be unreported, that would be missed in here. But overall, I recommend getting this book. You can probably get this, most likely you can get this one a lot easier than you can get this one. I got this one in 2003 off eBay from a Canadian person that was selling the book on eBay. This came from Pinewinds Press. That's the publisher of this version. Anyway, I do recommend getting the book. It's great stuff.